Hey guys, Josh here. I just want to make a video really quickly discussing my thoughts on Rogue One, a Star Wars story. This will be spoiler free, so as long as you've seen the trailers, you're safe here. I'm going to be really vague in how I describe things so I don't give anything away, but if you are one of those people that avoided all the trailers and everything altogether, you don't want to watch this. That being said, let's just jump right into it. Now, this film is primarily going to have good feelings from me, so I just want to quickly address the things I didn't like first so we can end on a good note. So just talking about the few things I didn't like, let's just jump in first of all with there are a couple of CGI characters. I will not say who they are, but they're fully CGI. And they had to be in there and they had to be CGI, and I understand that. And that's not really my complaint so much as just that it is noticeably CGI. That's not to say it's bad CGI, it's amazing CGI. It's just noticeably CGI, unfortunately. I don't think it really distracts from the film much. I think that they did a really good job with the CGI, with the voices and the characterization, and it worked great. But it's noticeable, especially in certain scenes. I also think that this film, similar to Gareth Edwards' previous two films, Monsters and Godzilla, does have a bit of a pacing problem. What I say about that is that the first 45 minutes are amazing. The last 45 minutes are amazing. And then in between, there's a lot of really good stuff. And then there's a couple parts where it does lag a little bit, where it kind of gets to a point where you're starting to feel the length of the film, which this is not as long of a film as most of the other Star Wars films. So you shouldn't really feel that length as much, but you do in a couple spots. I'll also say I don't think the characterization on the new characters was as good as we've come to expect from Star Wars, by which I mean it's certainly better than any characterization in the prequels, hands down. And it's not bad characterization, but I do think that all these characters, with the possible exception of Jen Erso, they don't have the same they don't have that same characterization, same feeling that you get with the other characters, right? Like when you watch the original Star Wars, right? Luke and Leia and Han, no one else could have played those characters. They're these great characters you really care about, you really love, you feel for them, and even with Episode 7, which I think was amazing, Rey and Finn and Poe, those actors are those characters, and you immediately latch onto those characters. I didn't feel like the characters in Rogue One stood out quite as much. Not to say that they're bad characters, because they're not. They're really good characters, but you don't feel quite the same for them. I'll also say this doesn't quite capture all of the Star Wars magic in the way that Episode 7 did, in the way that the original trilogy did. It does feel like a Star Wars film, but I feel like it's slightly less about a fun, magical journey, which was intentional. And those are my primary complaints with the film, or just those few things. And like I said, I mean, they're mostly nitpicky, right? The CGI was a bit annoying in a couple spots, things like that. I did feel like the cinematography, and I think this was intentional, they wanted to kind of make this a smaller film, I think, and so the cinematography isn't as grandiose as in the other films, where you don't get all the big sweeping shots and all the huge action. Like, you have a ton of action set pieces, and it's really well directed, but you don't get the same the same style of cinematography for it. Like if you think about Episode 7, that giant battle when they go and see Maz Kanata, and the way that the cinematography in that scene is done, to where you get these huge sweeping shots and all these things that show like the epicness and the hugeness of this battle, and you don't get as many of those in here, which I think is intentional, because this is a very down on the ground, dirty film, which isn't necessarily a complaint, but for me it didn't work quite as well. And now we're just going to jump into things that I liked, because there are a ton of things that I liked. So first of all, the droid in this, voiced by Alan Tudyk, is my favorite Star Wars droid ever. Just hands down. I loved him. K2SO is just my favorite droid ever. He's funny. He's perfect for this film. He's the best way to have comic relief, because he actually works and he's not stupid. He's not over the top. So I loved that. I also thought, if you've seen the trailers, you know Darth Vader's in it. He's barely in it, but when he's in it, good lord is he in it. And there's a scene in here, I won't say when or where or how, but there's a scene in here with Darth Vader that is the best scene with Darth Vader ever. It just is. It's just the best scene with Darth Vader ever. The actual, the last 45 minutes of this film are 45 of the most amazing moments in any Star Wars film ever, and the last 5 minutes are really close to my favorite 5 minutes from a Star Wars film ever. They are so close to perfect. It's just unbelievable. They're just insane. And I will commend Disney for something here. Because we kind of know how it ends in a way, they did a really good job of doing a lot of things along the way that we weren't expecting, so that the story stays fresh and new and we don't know exactly what's going to happen. And the ending, it took cojones. I'm not going to say what it was, but it took cojones. And they did a really good job with that. I will say this is the most violent Star Wars film, hands down. The most violent and brutal Star Wars film that there's ever been. It's much darker and more brutal and more violent than Empire Strikes Back. And that's not even a complaint. It's something you should know. If you're not a fan of Empire Strikes Back, you might not like it quite as much. I'm not a huge fan of Empire Strikes Back, so I didn't like this as much as I have some friends that loved Empire Strikes Back, and they loved this. But this is a really, really, really good film. As far as comparing it to Episode 7, what I'll say is this. It's going to depend on who you are. Because really, there are two kinds of people in this world. Those that prefer Empire Strikes Back, and those that prefer A New Hope. And I prefer A New Hope, so I liked Episode 7 just a little bit more. People that preferred Empire Strikes Back are going to prefer this, and I think that they're comparable as far as the filmmaking quality. I think they're very comparable, but this does have, I think, a few more standout moments than Episode 7 did, and it did a much better job of blending in nostalgia into the story in a natural way. So yeah, those are my general thoughts on the film. I think it's really good. I think it shows that these anthology films Disney's doing are a good idea, that they can work. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give Rogue One: A Star Wars Story an A-. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share.